Chapter 1088. Chu Xiu wasn't trying to bully Lin Fengwu on purpose by scaring her. It was just a warning. Chu Xiu had never intended to use this trick from the beginning. Not only would it be ineffective, but it would also cause trouble. Therefore, from the beginning, Chu Xiu had put himself in a superior position. He did not come here to play house with these children. The most important thing was to find clues about Dugu Weiwei as soon as possible and find a way to return. In the main hall of the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect, a dignified middle-aged man saw Lin Fengwu walk in. He immediately stood up and said in a complaining tone, "Daughter, where have you been all this time? Do you know that I was about to go crazy from anxiety? I almost asked the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect to search for you in the entire Fenglin Prefecture." This middle-aged man was the current sect leader of the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect, Lin Yazi. He looked good, and he must have been a handsome man when he was young. However, thinking about it, it was normal. If he was ugly, he would not have been able to give birth to a daughter as beautiful as Lin Fengwu. Lin Fengwu's voice was filled with hatred as she said, "It was the Changhe sect and other forces who joined forces to kill me. They planned to force me into the uninhabited forest of the Diluo Mountains, intending to silence me there. The reason was only because of the heavenly absolute sword technique. After all, I have always been stopping you from handing the heavenly absolute sword technique to them." Lin Yazi's face immediately surged with anger as he shouted in a low voice, "They've gone too far." As the leader of the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect, Lin Yazi's personality was actually not that tough. However, no matter how weak his personality was, he could not stand others wanting to kill his most beloved daughter. Lin Fengwu pointed at Chu Xiu and said, "Originally, my daughter was definitely going to die this time, but fortunately, Senior Chu made a move and killed those people, saving my daughter." Lin Yazi hurriedly bowed to Chu Xiu and said, "Thank you, little brother. Little brother saved my daughter's life this time. I will definitely repay you generously." At this time, Zhao Liangyu on the side said indifferently, "Maybe he colluded with those forces and deliberately lied to you? It's not that I'm paranoid, but in the Diluo Mountains of Fenglin Prefecture, there is nothing but trees. Which normal person will go to that kind of place?" Lin Fengwu thought of Chu Xiu's metaphor about the dragon and the monkey before, and she hurriedly shouted, "Senior fellow apprentice, don't talk nonsense. Senior Chu killed 5 real pellet state martial artists when he saved me. Which family is so stupid to sacrifice 5 real pellet state martial artists just to plant a spy?" Whether it was in the mortal realm or here, the real pellet state couldn't be regarded as weak. At least it was the backbone of a sect. Lin Yazi only remembered to observe Chu Xiu's strength after hearing Lin Fengwu's words. Ling Yi, Wu to say, Chun, Junior Senior Yu. Although Chu Xiu didn't reveal his realm, he couldn't actively check Chu Xiu's realm, which meant that Chu Xiu's realm might be higher than his. Moreover, he could feel from the faint coercion that Chu Xiu exuded that the other party was definitely a powerhouse. So this time Lin Yazi cautiously cupped his fist at Chu Xiu and said, "May I ask which sect is this brother from?" Last time, Lin Yazi's salute was just a polite thank you. This time, his salute was respectful and polite to a powerhouse. Lin Fengwu added on the side, "Senior Chu is a disciple of a hidden powerhouse. This time, he came to the martial world to gain experience." Chu Xiu nodded lightly. When Lin Yazi heard this, he was a little relieved. It turned out to be a disciple cultivated by those old monsters. No wonder he had such strength. In the Daoyu Ocean, because of the extremely rich heaven and earth aura, it was not difficult to condense martial Dao real pellet, and there was almost no danger of backlash. Therefore, the number of real pellet state martial artists here was definitely far more than the lower realm. But when it came to the true fire spiritual refinement realm, it was not easy for martial artists to break through. It was always more difficult to comprehend heaven and earth than to accumulate strength. Lin Yazi was in the true fire spiritual refinement realm, so he naturally knew the difficulty of this realm. The young man in front of him didn't seem to be much older than Lin Fengwu, but he had already reached the true fire spiritual cultivation realm a long time ago. In terms of realm, he was even slightly higher than himself. If he was really taught by those old monsters who cultivated in seclusion, then it would be very normal. Lin Yazi laughed and said, "It turns out that this brother is actually the descendant of Gu Zun. No wonder you have such strength at such a young age. I really admire you. With my talent, it took me decades to cultivate to this realm. I guess the Guzun will definitely look down on me. Chu Xiu said indifferently. Sect Master Lin is too modest. Strength and power can't be both. I have been practicing martial arts with my master since I was a child. I have only focused on martial arts, so I have the strength I have now. Sect Master Lin must have put in a lot of effort to develop the Nine Phoenix Sword sect to such a big extent. Lin Yazi smiled and said, the foundation passed down by my ancestors can't be ruined in my hands. Brother Chu, you saved Fengwu this time, so you are the benefactor of Lin Yazi and the entire Nine Phoenix Sword sect. In the evening, I will arrange a banquet to entertain Brother Chu. Now I will ask someone to take Brother Chu down to rest for a while. How about it? Chu Xiu thought for a while, then nodded and said, okay, then I will trouble Sect Master Lin. Chu Xiu left with a Nine Phoenix Sword sect disciple, but he quietly moved his hand and left a weak trace of mental power in the hall. This was the power of the inner demon. The other party was not a whole body, so it wouldn't use too much power if it was only used to peak and split up. Sure enough, after Chu Xiu left, Lin Yazi waved his hand and mobilized the energy of the heavens and the earth to seal off the sounds and senses in the surroundings, and he changed his extremely polite and humble attitude from before and reprimanded Lin Fengwu. I've taught you before to keep a low profile when doing things. You clearly know that my Nine Phoenix Sword sect is in trouble now. Yet you actually didn't bring any guards when you went out. Aren't you taking the initiative to draw the attention of others? Lin Fengwu stuck out her tongue mischievously and said in a low voice, I won't do it next time. Besides, I was quite lucky to meet Senior Chu and save me. Zhao Liangyu snorted and said, Master, this person's background is suspicious. Don't you have the slightest suspicion? Lin Fengwu shouted at Zhao Liangyu, Senior brother, stop pestering me. How is Senior Chu suspicious? Father already said that he is the successor of the ancient sovereign. At this point, Lin Fengwu suddenly looked at Lin Yazi with some confusion. Right, father, what is the successor of the ancient sovereign? Why does this name sound slightly familiar? Chu Xiu's eyebrows moved slightly. This was also what he wanted to know, but he didn't ask to avoid suspicion. Lin Yazi lightly snorted and said, I've said it before. As a girl, it's fine if you fight and kill, but it turns out that you don't even remember this kind of common sense. If word of this gets out, you'll become a laughing stock. The ancient sovereign has a very long history, dating back to 10,000 years ago. It is said that when our ancestors came to the Daluotian 10,000 years ago, they all came to the Daluotian in units such as sects, and aristocratic families. However, there were also some rogue cultivators who followed them to the Daluotian. These rogue cultivators didn't choose to establish their own sects in the Daluotian. Instead, they pursued the pinnacle of martial arts, so they chose to live in seclusion in the mountains and concentrate on teaching their disciples martial arts. These people had a long history, and their dedication to martial arts was unimaginable. They were also the people that the large sects in the Jianghu were least willing to provoke. Their title was the Ancient Sovereign. Generally speaking, there were only two types of Guzun's successors. The first type was those who didn't perform too well and disappointed the Guzun, so they couldn't become his successor. They would be kicked out and the Guzun would then take in a new successor. Of course, this kind of performance wasn't very good, but it was only according to their standards. Anyone who could be accepted as a successor by the ancient sovereign was extremely talented. There are many great figures in the Jianghu who used to be the ancient sovereign's successor. Although they couldn't meet the ancient sovereign's requirements, they would still be top-notch experts in the outside world. The other kind was those who performed too well, and their martial arts cultivation even surpassed the cultivation of their state of mind. This would cause their foundation to be unstable, so they came out to train their state of mind. Lin Fengwu thought for a moment. Which kind is Senior Chu? He's very strong, so it should be the latter. He also said that it was his master who sent him out to train. Lin Yazi gave Lin Fengwu a meaningful look. Silly girl, you believe everything he says. When did I know he was the ancient sovereign's successor? He never admitted it himself. Lin Fengwu hurriedly said, but Senior Chu really did save me. Lin Yazi shook his head. Don't judge people so one-sidedly. I'll test him again during the banquet. I'll see if he really is the ancient sovereign's successor or someone with ulterior motives. Fengwu, you go with your senior brother first. He's been looking for you very anxiously. Although Lin Fengwu was stronger than Zhao Liangyu, Lin Yazi still wanted to matchmake them. Lin Fengwu was a woman after all. It was not good to say that a woman was in charge of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, and it was also somewhat inconvenient. On the other hand, Zhao Liangyu was a disciple he had raised since he was young, so he was no different from a son. After the two of them got together, their children would even have the surname Lin, which was equivalent to marrying into the family. Zhao Liangyu wouldn't have any complaints. When the time came, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect would still belong to the Lin family. Zhao Liangyu's eyes lit up, but Lin Fengwu still looked reluctant. In another room, Chu Xiu withdrew the power of the inner demon and sneered. No wonder Lin Yazi's Nine Phoenix Sword sect wasn't very strong. It had a lot to do with him, the sect master. People always hesitated and doubted when they did things. If they believed it, then they believed it. If they didn't, then they didn't. Chapter 1089. At the banquet at night, Lin Yazi invited all the high-level members of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, allowing Chu Xiu to see the strength of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. In the entire Nine Phoenix Sword sect, there were more than a dozen real pellet state martial artists, plus he, the sect master of the true fire spirit refinement state. This kind of strength was not weak in Fonglin County, but it was only in the middle. In the entire East Territory, it was not ranked at all. But in the mortal world, this kind of strength was fully qualified to become a major sect in the Jianghu Song. And even among the major sects in the Jianghu Song, it could be ranked in the middle. Of course, there was actually nothing to compare. While Chu Xiu did not know exactly how big the celestial absolute plane was, the size of the celestial plane was much larger than the lower world's prefectures. Perhaps because there was no imperial management, the management of the entire Daluocean was relatively rough. There were only a dozen or so counties in the entire eastern region, and the fact that the Nine Phoenix Sword sect could be ranked at this level in one of the counties was already considered a relatively respectable sect. Even if it wasn't a large sect, it wasn't a small sect either. After pouring a few glasses of wine to Chu Xiu and expressing his gratitude, Lin Yazi tentatively asked Chu Xiu, "Brother Chu, the name of Guzun is well known to me, but I don't know more details. Therefore, I am also very curious. May I know where Brother Chu's master came from?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "The origins of my lineage can't be revealed for now. The founder of my lineage was defeated by someone 500 years ago, and since then, he has viewed it as a great humiliation. I have to defeat the successor of my enemy and wipe away the humiliation before I can reveal my name and legacy. However, he once told me in a chat that my ancestor once discussed Tao with the Tao master of the Three Pure Temple and Zen with the monks of the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple. He fought with the masters of the Blissful Demon Palace and drank with the High Heaven Sect master. Back when he was in the illusory Six Realms, Chu Xiu had heard of the names of these top ancient sections. Although he didn't know if these top sects were still around, it didn't matter. Even if they weren't around anymore, he was still bragging about the ancient times. He wasn't afraid of being exposed. In any case, Lin Yazi was somewhat shocked when he heard these deafening names. Lin Yazi couldn't see any flaws in Chu Xiu's expression, so he continued, "Brother Chu, it's said that the cultivators of Guzun's lineage are extremely stubborn when it comes to martial arts. I'm sure you must have a different understanding of martial arts. I wonder if Brother Chu can enlighten us today?" If Lin Yazi's actions were in the lower realm, it would be extremely impolite. Who would explain martial arts to someone who wasn't related to them? However, when he was in the lower realm, Chu Xiu had already learned about some ancient customs in the secret realm. In ancient times, the preaching of the Tao was very popular. Those experts from the Tao sects or Buddhist sects would publicly preach the Tao to attract disciples. Of course, they only preached the common martial Tao, not secret techniques. Chu Xiu said with a smile that didn't look like a smile, "Sure, what would sect leader Lin like to hear about?" Lin Yazi cautiously asked, "What does Brother Chu's bloodline specialize in?" There weren't many people in the Daluocean who were qualified to be called Guzun. 10,000 years ago, those Guzun experts lived in seclusion in the mountains and pursued the pinnacle of martial Tao. Most of them only had a single disciple. Although they were strong, accepting a disciple wasn't something that could be done with just strength. Luck was also needed. As a result, a portion of the Prime Sovereign's legacies were severed under such circumstances. There weren't many Prime Sovereigns left in Exalted Major. Although some of them lived in seclusion in the mountains, their names were still mentioned in the legends of the underworld. Lin Yazi had asked this question because he wanted to probe Chu Xiu's cultivation technique, to see if he could find out which faction Chu Xiu belonged to. Chu Xiu casually waved his hand. My master is a Tao, Buddhist, and demon cultivator. He dabbles in weapons, sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. Sect Master Lin, you can ask about any of them. Lin Yazi thought for a moment. My Nine Phoenix Sword Sect is a sword sect, so I naturally want to ask about swordsmanship. Lin Yazi wanted to ask questions related to swordsmanship, not only because the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect was a sword sect, but also because Chu Xiu might not understand anything else. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, the path of the sword is ever-changing. For a cultivator who practices the sword, the most important thing is not your cultivation, nor your swordsmanship, but the conviction in your heart. Conviction? Everyone was stunned. This was the first time they had heard of such a thing. Zhao Liangyu curled his lips and whispered, deliberately mystifying things. Lin Fengwu glared at him, indicating for him to stop talking nonsense. Lin Yazi didn't understand either. He cupped his hands and asked, may I ask what this word means? Chu Xiu pointed at the sword in Lin Yazi's hand. Some swordsmen use heavy swords, while others use thin swords. Some swordsmanship is hard and fierce, while others have a soft and gentle one. In terms of transformations, none of the weapons could compare to a long sword that moved in a straight line. That's why I said that the path of the sword is ever-changing, and there isn't a single path that is absolutely correct. However, a swordsman must have a conviction. Apart from the sword, there is nothing else. The sword in your hand is your life. When this conviction reaches its peak, no matter what sword technique you practice, your attainments in the path of the sword will not be too low. If you only treat the sword in your hand as an ordinary weapon, then you are not fit to be called a swordsman. You are just a cultivator who practices the sword. Whether you hold a sword or a fire stick, it doesn't make a difference. Chu Xiu didn't know the path of the sword. The only sword technique he knew was the Destiny Sword path of the Black Tortoise True technique. However, just because Chu Xiu didn't know the path of the sword didn't mean that he didn't understand it. Chu Xiu had many swordsmen by his side, and he had come into contact with many of them. For example, Feng Qishao's path of the sword was naturally formed. Although he was mischievous and his cultivation often couldn't keep up, his understanding of the path of the sword wasn't inferior to the top powerhouses in Sword King City. There was also the Sword Saint of the Eastern Sea, Kong Dongming. His path of the sword was divine. Although he was still in the true fire spirit refinement realm, his comprehension of the path of the sword had already reached the mysterious heaven and earth realm. After interacting with these people for so long, if Chu Xiu still couldn't fool Lin Yazi and the others, then he would have wasted his time. Although Lin Yazi was a true fire spirit refinement realm warrior, his and the entire Nine Phoenix Sword Sect's understanding of the path of the sword was actually very superficial. In Chu Xiu's view, although they weren't weak compared to the lower worlds, they weren't as strong as the Yu Palace that had been destroyed by Chu Xiu. In other words, they were on the level of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect in the lower worlds. Although they were a sword sect, they weren't qualified to be one of the 5 great sword sections. The rich primal energy of the universe in the Dalyu Ocean made it easier for cultivators to advance. However, this also caused the Dalyu Ocean cultivators' understanding of the path of the martial path to be unable to match their level. They were generally on the low side, and had been fooled by an outsider like Chu Xiu. Actually, strictly speaking, Chu Xiu wasn't fooling them. The sword cultivators he had seen had indeed pushed their belief in the path of the sword to the extreme. There were many who could abandon their swords and do nothing else. However, those people were existences that stood at the peak of the sword path in the lower worlds. Even if the people in the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect knew, they wouldn't be able to reach this level. For example, Not everyone in the Jianghu knew about the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but at the very least, almost all the cultivators with the legacies of a large sect knew about it. But knowing was one thing. But how many people in the entire Jianghu had the right to step into the peak of the mysterious heaven and earth realm? At this moment, the entire hall was silent. Apart from people like Zhao Liangyu, who was looking at Chu Xiu with a displeased expression, Lin Yazi, Lin Fengwu, and the others were already standing there in a daze. The more they thought about it, the more shocked they became. After a long while, Lin Yazi let out a long sigh, stood up, and solemnly bowed to Chu Xiu. Brother Chu is indeed worthy of being Gu Zun's successor. Listening to your words is better than reading 10 years of swordsmanship. No matter how scheming Lin Yazi was, he was still a sect master and a cultivator. He was convinced by the theories Chu Xiu spoke of. In the Eastern Territory, Lin Yazi had gone to some of the top sects in the Eastern Territory in the past, such as High Heaven Sect, Imperial Sky Pavilion, and other mysterious heaven and earth realm masters. However, he felt that although the things Chu Xiu said were simple, they were rich in meaning, and the more he thought about it, the more shocked he became. At this time, he was almost certain that the person in front of him was indeed Gu Zun's successor. Ordinary sword Dao martial artists would not be able to say such words. Furthermore, the various sword Dao manuals would not record such things like comprehension. After his suspicions of Chu Xiu lessened, Lin Yazi's attitude towards Chu Xiu became more cordial. Although experts with the title of Gu Zun were strong, because they lived in seclusion in the mountains, they didn't interfere in the disputes of Jianghu, so their deterrence wasn't as great as the experts of some large sections. But at the same time, very few people in the outside world were willing to offend such experts. Whenever Gu Zun's successor set foot in Jianghu, if they wanted to stay in Jianghu and establish a foundation, their chances of success were much higher than ordinary cultivators. If they just wanted to travel and gain experience, then there was no harm in befriending them. They could leave behind good karma that might come in handy in the future. After the two sides exchanged hypocritical pleasantries at the banquet, Chu Xiu asked Lin Yazi, "Sect Master Lin, I came out of seclusion this time not only to comply with Master's request to enter Jianghu to gain experience, but also to take revenge on the disciples of my faction. I wonder if Sect Master Lin has heard of this person?" As he spoke, Chu Xiu repeated what he had told Lin Fengwu to Lin Yazi. Lin Yazi thought for a moment. "De Guiwei? Please forgive me, Brother Chu, but I've never heard of this name. Do you have more detailed information on this expert's strength?" Chu Xiu knocked on the table. "He comes from the demonic path and probably uses a saber. He's also proficient in other weapons. As for his strength, I can only say that he is much stronger than the ancestor of my bloodline." Lin Yazi couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Stronger than in Gu Zun? Just what kind of existence was that? Chapter 1090. Chu Xiu wanted to inquire about Dugu Weiwei from Lin Yazi, but unfortunately, he also failed. Lin Yazi smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Chu, I've really never heard of this Dugu Weiwei's name. Among the powerhouses I know, there isn't a single person who can match up to him. Of course, it's also possible that I'm ignorant and ill-informed. Actually, the history of my Nine Phoenix Sword sect isn't that long. It's only a little more than 400 years and 3 generations. My great-grandfather was a disciple of a large sect in the northern region, the mysterious Heaven Realm. Due to some kind of accident, he came to the eastern region's Fonglin County and settled down. My grandfather's talent was too poor, and he didn't even completely inherit the martial Dao of my Lin clan before he passed away. It was only during my father's generation that the Nine Phoenix Sword sect was truly established. Therefore, I know very little about these secrets of the pugilistic world. Brother Chu, if you ask me about some of the current matters of the pugilistic world, then it's fine. But 500 years ago, I really couldn't help you even if I wanted to." Hearing Lin Yazi's words, Chu Xiu didn't continue to ask if he knew about Ning Xuanji. Even someone with a personality like Dugu Weiwei couldn't leave his name on a large scale, let alone Ning Xuanji. However, Chu Xiu felt that something was wrong. With Dugu Weiwei's personality and strength, he would definitely be as dazzling as the sun wherever he went. Ning Xuanji might not have left behind such a great reputation, But as long as Dugu Weiwei appeared in this world, he definitely wouldn't be a nobody. The Nine Phoenix Sword sect was too small, so they might not know about some of the big secret matters. It seemed that he needed to understand the Daluotian a little more. At this time, Lin Yazi cautiously asked Chu Xiu, "Brother Chu, I wonder what your main objective is in this Jianghu?" Chu Xiu rubbed his head and put on a slightly vexed expression. "My master said that my strength is improving too fast, and my state of mind can't keep up with my strength. If I continue like this, it will affect my future cultivation. So he told me to temporarily stop improving my cultivation and step into the world of Jianghu to train my heart. When I feel that my state of mind can match my strength, then I can go back. At the same time, I have to find the descendant of the Chou family to avenge myself." The disciples of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect were dumbstruck when they heard this. It was the first time they'd heard of someone actually complaining about being too strong. Zhao Liangyu pursed his lips. He thought that this person was a little shameless, who would brag about how quickly their strength had increased. However, Lin Yazi felt that it was very normal. Chu Xiu was so young, but even he couldn't see through his strength. Who else but Gu Zun could train such an outstanding disciple? Even so, those Gu Zun experts might not be satisfied. The sole disciple of their lineage must be outstanding to the extreme, without the slightest flaw. Their state of mind might seem pretentious to other cultivators, but it was very important to Gu Zun's descendant. Lin Yazi tugged at Chu Xiu and said, "Brother Chu is Gu Zun's descendant, so I would only be asking to be humiliated if I made any suggestions on your cultivation. However, if Brother Chu wants to gain experience in the Jianghu, I can give you some suggestions." What is the Jianghu? To put it bluntly, the Jianghu is just a tangle of interests, fighting and killing. The Jianghu is dangerous, and people's hearts are unpredictable. A medium-sized sect like our Nine Phoenix Sword sect has always been in the Jianghu, so we are the closest to the Jianghu. The inner demon in Chu Xiu's mind would have laughed out loud if it weren't for the fact that it didn't have many human emotions when it heard Lin Yazi's words. He was actually talking about the Jianghu and benefits with Chu Xiu. This was simply too funny. The inner demon had been in the primitive demon cave for a long time, and had seen countless people's hearts. Chu Xiu was definitely the most special of them all. The complexity of his thoughts was unimaginable. At this time, Chu Xiu's face was expressionless, as if he had been taught a lesson. He simply listened to Lin Yazi's boast. The fact that Lin Yazi could say that the Jianghu was just a matter of fighting and killing was enough to prove this person's perspective. He was only clever, but he couldn't see through the big picture. Lin Yazi continued, "So if Brother Chu wants to gain experience in the Jianghu, why not join my Nine Phoenix Sword sect? Of course, with Brother Chu's strength and master, I naturally don't want Brother Chu to join my Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Instead, my Nine Phoenix Sword sect would like to invite Brother Chu to become a guest elder. Your status will be just below mine, and the entire sect will listen to Brother Chu's orders." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Guest elder? Does a guest elder have that much authority?" Although Lin Yazi didn't have a high perspective, he was still a bit clever. Giving such great authority to a guest elder, was he crazy? In the lower realms, guest elders and hangers-on were usually only available to the royal family and aristocratic families. However, they were all outsiders invited with a large sum of money. They were equivalent to high-level thugs, so it was impossible for them to have such great authority. Seeing the doubt in Chu Xiu's eyes, Lin Yazi patted his head and said, "I forgot, Brother Chu is the successor of the ancient sovereign. You haven't stepped into the Jianghu for so many years, so you don't understand these things." Exalted Major was currently filled with the desire to recruit guest elders. Not to mention the aristocratic families, even some of the major sects were doing the same. What's more, the cause of this trend was a prime sovereign's successor from more than 300 years ago. More than 300 years ago, among the ancient sovereigns, Mengxinghe, the disciple of the martial immortal galaxy's unfettered cultivator, roamed the Jianghu and became sworn brothers with the current successor of the Eastern Domain's Cold River City, Yi Weikong. At that time, the Cold River City was not yet a top sect in the Eastern Domain. Its strength could only be said to be not weak. Of course, it was much stronger than my Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Later, the Cold River City accidentally offended the Kiliakosm sect, a top sect in the southern domain. Even the current city lord of the Cold River City was accidentally killed. After Yi Weikong took over the Cold River City in a hurry, he stood his ground and made Meng Xinghe the guest elder of the Cold River City, giving him great power. Meng Xinghe's master, the Xinghe cultivator, was not only good at martial arts, astrology, divination, and planning. Under the leadership of Meng Xinghe and the trust of Yi Weikong, the Cold River City joined forces to resist the Kiliakosm sect in the eastern domain. At the same time, it accumulated strength. Finally, when its strength had accumulated to a certain extent, it began to counterattack the Kiliakosm sect. In the end, it defeated the Kiliakosm sect, causing the Kiliakosm sect to suffer heavy losses. The Cold River City also leaped to become a top sect in the eastern domain, comparable to those top sects that had existed for thousands of years. Later, Meng Xinghe felt that he had gained enough experience in the Jianghu. After giving Yi Weikong a cultivation method, he floated far away and returned to the mountain forest to take over the inheritance of the Xinghe cultivator. The deeds of these two people were spread by the people of the Jianghu. Since then, all the big sects also had the habit of recruiting guest elders. Don't doubt the people you use. Don't use the people you doubt. If the guest chamberlain's role was played well, it could be even more useful than the disciples of the sect. During the period when Meng Xinghe was the guest elder of the Cold River City, he also obtained various opportunities and treasures. In the end, Meng Xinghe was even praised as the strongest among all the Xinghe cultivators. Lin Yazi didn't hide these things from Chu Xiu. After all, this was something that everyone in the Jianghu knew. However, Lin Yazi's words also contained a hint of temptation. Meng Xinghe joined the Cold River City and helped it become a top sect in the eastern domain. However, he himself also became the strongest among all the Xinghe cultivators, not even losing to his master. Now, if you, Chu Xiu, help my Nine Phoenix Sword sect, you might be able to reach the same level as Meng Xinghe. As he spoke, Lin Yazi looked at Lin Fengwu. For the first time, he felt that although his daughter had outstanding talent, she had always caused trouble for him. She had finally done the right thing. However, he didn't expect that since helping anyone was the same as stepping into the Jianghu and experiencing the world of mortals. Why did Chu Xiu insist on helping your Nine Phoenix Sword sect? Could it be because your daughter has big breasts? In the entire eastern domain, there are countless sects that are stronger than your Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Chu Xiu only pondered for a moment, before an unfathomable smile appeared on his face. He said, "All right. After I left the mountain, the first person I met was Miss Lin. This is karma and also fate. Perhaps, this is the will of the heavens." Lin Yazi immediately laughed and said, Yes, it is the will of the heavens." Seeing that Chu Xiu had agreed, Lin Yazi immediately beamed with joy. He felt that his daughter was a little more pleasing to the eye. She had found a great opportunity. However, Lin Yazi had never thought of matchmaking Lin Fengwu with Chu Xiu. The reason was very simple. The descendants of the primes were emotionless, and only wanted to pursue the pinnacle of martial arts. Lust and children would both affect this. The tempering of the Jianghu was also a test of whether the descendants could withstand the temptation of the 7 emotions and 6 desires. If the descendants of the primes could not withstand this test, then they were not qualified to be the descendants. They would be automatically eliminated, and the primes of that lineage would also accept new disciples. Although they would not be so cruel as to take back their martial arts, they would completely sever their karma relationship with them. From then on, the two of them would be like strangers. Whether they lived or died, the previous primes would no longer care about them. If he were to matchmake his daughter with Chu Xiu now, it would be very easy for Chu Xiu to misunderstand that he was trying to destroy his heart of Tao. After the banquet ended, Lin Yazi immediately announced this matter in front of everyone. Almost all the disciples of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect were very excited. The descendants of the primes were famous in the Daoyu Ocean. Moreover, even if Chu Xiu was not the prime's descendant, and was just an ordinary true fire spirit refinement cultivator, it was a good thing that their Nine Phoenix Sword sect had such a powerhouse joining them. Only Zhao Liangyu's face was gloomy, and he looked a little unhappy. After the banquet ended, Zhao Liangyu pulled Lin Fengwu, who was about to leave, and said, Junior sister, go and persuade master. How can he so casually let Chu Xiu become a guest of our Nine Phoenix Sword sect, and give him such great power? Lin Fengwu said helplessly, Senior brother, don't be like this, okay? Senior Chu is the prime's descendant, and he only has the pinnacle of martial arts in his heart. He doesn't have those mortal feelings. Even if I like him, he won't like me. I really have nothing to do with him. Zhao Liangyu said anxiously, Junior sister, I'm not saying that because of this, but this Chu Xiu is really not a good person. Chapter 1091. Previously, Zhao Liangyu was a little against Chu Xiu because the opposite sex repels each other. He was afraid that his junior sister would be so close to a stranger. But later, Zhao Liangyu showed such hostility towards Chu Xiu was not because of this reason, but because he realized that Chu Xiu was really not an easy person to recognize. In other words, Chu Xiu's thoughts were not as simple as he made them out to be. As the eldest senior brother of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, Zhao Liangyu's talent and cultivation were not as good as Lin Fengwu's, but he was able to sit firmly in this position all these years and gain Lin Yazi's favor. One of the very important reasons was that he had a special ability, and that was that he was born with very keen senses. This sense did not refer to the five senses or the sixth sense, but he could sense a person's inner activities. Of course, this sense was not mind-reading. He could only feel a very vague general idea, such as whether the other party was scheming against him or had ill intentions and so on. Relying on this sense, Zhao Liangyu defeated many senior and junior brothers who were secretly scheming against him in the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, and sat firmly in the position of eldest senior brother. Previously, when facing Chu Xiu, he had never been able to see through Chu Xiu's thoughts. It was only when Chu Xiu said those words at the banquet that Zhao Liangyu vaguely felt that this Chu Xiu seemed to be hiding a lot of things. His thoughts were definitely not simple, and he was definitely not a good person. However, because his previous hostility towards Chu Xiu was too obvious, Lin Fengwu did not believe what he said at all. Senior brother, can you be a little more mature? Don't involve others in the matter between us. Senior Chu is already a foreign elder of my Nine Phoenix Sword sect now. If you speak ill of him again, then I'll have to tell father. After saying that, Lin Fengwu left a little angrily. Looking at his back, Zhao Liangyu snorted coldly and said, If you don't listen to others, you will definitely regret it in the end. The next morning, after Chu Xiu woke up early, he first went to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect's scripture pavilion to find many books to read. Of course, Chu Xiu wasn't here for the Nine Phoenix Sword sect's cultivation technique manuals. Although the cultivation technique of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect was not considered low-level, it was definitely not high-level either. Chu Xiu could not be bothered to look at it even if it was given to him for free. What Chu Xiu was looking at were some general questions about the Daluotian people, as well as some Daluotian history. Previously, Chu Xiu had thought that the Daluotian would definitely cover up that part of history. After all, what the Daluotian ancestors had done back then wasn't exactly glorious. It was fine to escape to another world, but it was a blatant abandonment of the word fairness. Although it was pardonable, it was not honorable. But it turned out that these things were recorded very clearly in the Daluotian's ancient books. In ancient times, the whole world was divided into 4 regions: East, West, South, and North. Therefore, after the Daluotian people came to the Daluotian, although the terrain of the Daluotian was completely different from that of the mortal world, they still kept this name, perhaps because they missed their ancestral land. Even some counties were named after the former names. And in the center of the 4 regions was the Daluotian Divine Palace. This Daluotian Divine Palace was the center of the entire Daluotian, and it was also where the Dragon Vein was located. It was also the place where the ancient martial artists broke through the world and entered the Daluotian. Therefore, it was very important and was jointly controlled by the top sections. Every 10 years, the top sects were qualified to send a group of people to enter the Daluotian Divine Palace to cultivate. These things were recorded in detail in the Daluotian history. No wonder the people who ran out of the battlefield between Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji shouted something about the ancestral land, and were killed by Feng Qinglan in the end. It turned out that almost everyone in the Daluotian knew about the ancestral land. However, the Daluotian people did not know that there were still people living in the ancestral land. At least in the ancient books recorded by the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, there were only descriptions about the mortal world before the Great Ancient Tribulation, but not after. The ancient books also tacitly agreed that their ancestral land had been destroyed in the Great Ancient Tribulation, and there was no vitality. In the following time, Chushio learned some more common knowledge about the Daluotian, and he also learned the Daluotian language fluently. Although his accent was a little awkward before, Lin Fengwu and Lin Yazi did not care. They thought that it was because he stayed in the mountains and forests for a long time without anyone to talk to. But now it was time for Chushio to change his accent. Otherwise it might arouse the suspicion of others. Chushio stayed in the Sutras depository for many days, but Lin Yazi could not sit still. He asked Chushio to be a guest because he wanted him to help strengthen the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, not to let Chushio read books. But now, during this period, Chushio directly went into the Sutras depository and did not come out. Lin Yazi had to invite Chushio out of the Sutras depository. Chushio was still a little unwilling, and said, "Lord Lin, I have stayed in the forest for so long, and I must finish reading the movements outside. There are still many ancient books that I have not finished reading. Why did you bring me out?" Chushio was really reading in the Sutras depository. How could he finish understanding the 10,000 years of Daluotian history in just a few days? It wasn't that Chushio was fond of studying such things. Rather, he wanted to learn more about the celestial exalted plane's history over the past 10,000 years. He wanted to see how the forces and sects of the celestial exalted plane operated, and their personalities. After reading for a few days, if Chushio had to give an evaluation to the Daluotian, then Chushio's evaluation would be ancient. Ancient did not mean strong or good, but it did not mean bad either. The inheritance of the Daluotian could be traced back to ancient times. More than half of the current Daluotian sects, or more accurately, 80% of the factions, could be traced back to ancient times. There was also Chushio's fake identity, and the inheritance of the primes, which could be traced back to ancient times. In other words, after a whole 10,000 years, only 20% of the Daluotian factions had risen. This was simply inconceivable. In the lower realms, it was the opposite. Factions that had more than 10,000 years of inheritance were rare. Chushio did not know whether this situation was good or bad. Was it because the Daluotian factions were too strong and stable, or because the Daluotian cultivators lacked the fighting spirit to cause this result? This was what Chushio had seen in the past few days. Before he could figure out more, he was called out by Lin Yazi. Looking at Chushio, Lin Yazi smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Chu, if you continue to read, my Nine Phoenix Sword sect might not exist anymore. During this period, my Nine Phoenix Sword sect has been facing countless troubles." Chushio raised his eyebrows and asked, "Oh, what troubles?" Lin Yazi said, "Actually, Brother Chu, you should know that there are a few sects in Fonglin County that are close to my Nine Phoenix Sword sect. They coveted my Nine Phoenix Sword sect's heavenly absolute sword technique, so they came to find trouble with me. Originally, I had already agreed to share the heavenly absolute sword technique with them, but I didn't expect them to be so insatiable. They even wanted to kill my daughter, so I fell out with them. During these past few days, they've been taking turns to suppress the businesses of my Nine Phoenix Sword sect in Fonglin County, and we must think of a way to deal with them. Otherwise, if we allow them to nibble away at our businesses step by step, then our Nine Phoenix Sword sect will never have a day of peace." Chushio looked at Lin Yazi with a strange gaze. Do we still need to think of a way to solve this problem? Hearing this, Lin Yazi felt even more strange. Don't we need to think of a way? Chushio said indifferently, "These sects covet the heavenly absolute sword technique in your hands. Coveting this kind of treasure is equivalent to stealing your wealth. They almost killed your most beloved and only son and daughter. This is the revenge of killing a relative. Now they are still nibbling away at your Nine Phoenix Sword sect step by step, wanting to destroy it. This is equivalent to exterminating your sect. They are now ready to steal your wealth, kill your close relatives, and destroy your entire sect. They are just short of shitting on your head. Are you still going to think of a way? Of course, we will fight them with our lives. What else do you need to think of? Lin Yazi was aggrieved by Chu Xiu's words, but he could only say, of course, I also know that we have to fight with our lives, but the problem is that even if we fight with our lives, we might not be able to win. It's fine if it's just one sect, but this time, there are 3 sections. How can we fight? Chu Xiu threw away the book in his hand and said indifferently, we couldn't win in the past, but now that we have a guest elder like me, can we still not win? Lin Yazi rubbed his hands excitedly. He had been waiting for Chu Xiu to say this. Brother Chu, I will leave the 9 Phoenix Sword sect to you from now on. How are we going to make a move? Do you need to lay out a plan first? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, is there a need to go through so much trouble to kill people? It's simple and direct. I'm killing people. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Sect Master Lin, you just need to bring people over and help me clean up the mess. Seeing Chu Xiu's indifferent appearance, Lin Yazi was a little dazed, but he didn't doubt it. Because he didn't just hear confidence from Chu Xiu's indifferent tone. He even heard a wisp of dense killing intent. That wasn't Chu Xiu's intentional killing intent, but it was released subconsciously. Lin Yazi was still a little puzzled about this. Didn't this Chu Xiu always live in seclusion in the mountains? At most he could kill some demonic beasts. How could he possibly nurture such a strong killing intent? However, Lin Yazi was only puzzled for a short moment and didn't think too much about it. According to Chu Xiu, his martial arts were Taoist, Buddhist, and demonic. Among them, he was most proficient in demonic Tao cultivation techniques. Demonic Tao cultivation techniques were extremely gloomy, so they would condense a large amount of blood qi. It was normal for Chu Xiu to have this kind of killing intent. Because Dugu Weiwei didn't exist, the Dao Ocean cultivators didn't discriminate against demonic Tao cultivation techniques. They just felt a little annoyed with cultivators who cultivated demonic Tao cultivation techniques. After all, demonic Tao cultivation techniques were extremely gloomy. So cultivators who cultivated demonic Tao cultivation techniques were more bloodthirsty and eccentric. However, it was only a slight annoyance, and it was far from the level of wanting to exterminate demons in the lower realms. It could be said that Dugu Weiwei's existence had allowed the demonic Tao to reach its peak, but it had also caused it to fall to the bottom. Chapter 1092. In a mountain forest outside Fonglin County's Long River sect, hundreds of 9 Phoenix Sword sect elites gathered here. All the 9 Phoenix Sword sect martial artists felt very novel. For a sect like 9 Phoenix Sword sect, in the process of rising, there would definitely be sex fighting and disputes, and they were actually used to it. But it was really the first time they encountered something like this without any preparation. It could be said to be simple and violent to the extreme, which made them a little uncomfortable. Lin Fengwu stood behind Chu Xiu. She was very confident in Chu Xiu. Since the last time in the Dilua Mountains, when she saw the power of Chu Xiu killing 5 real pellet realm martial artists in an instant, Lin Fengwu was very confident in Chu Xiu. Zhao Liangyu stood next to Lin Fengwu, looking at Chu Xiu with a vigilant expression. Intuition told him that Chu Xiu was not a good person. Even if he was helping 9 Phoenix Sword sects solve the trouble now. In fact, he had ulterior motives and had his own calculations. Sect Master Lin, can you help me explain the general information of this Long River sect? Chu Xiu said to Lin Yazi on the side. Lin Yazi nodded and said, I almost forgot before the fight. I really should tell Brother Chu about the opponent's information. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Chu Xiu shook his head. That's not what I meant. It's just that I want to know exactly who it was that I killed. Lin Yazi choked for a moment, but he still coughed and said, the origin of Long River sect is actually very similar to my 9 Phoenix Sword sect. The ancestors of my 9 Phoenix Sword sect came from the Mystic Heaven Mirror in the northern region, and the sect master of Long River sect, Fang Changhe, came from the War God sect in the southern region. The other party is also a top force in the southern region. It is said that Fang Changhe seemed to have offended some big shot in the War God sect, and said something he shouldn't say, so he was expelled. When this person had just settled down in Fonglin County, he'd once sought help from my 9 Phoenix Sword sect. I never expected that he would be so ungrateful, and actually want to kill my daughter. Chu Xiu didn't care about Lin Yasi's indignation. He just rubbed his chin. He felt that the way the Daluotian handled things was indeed a bit strange. It seemed that the top sects never killed their disciples who committed mistakes. They didn't even take back their martial arts. They simply expelled them from the sect. By doing this, could it be that they still wanted to leave behind a trace of incense offerings? Aren't you afraid that your disciples will resent you and take revenge in the future? In any case, Chu Xiu would not do such a thing that would bring him endless trouble. Although some of the other sects in the lower realms would not exterminate them, they would take back their martial arts. However, the Daluotian's way of doing things was different. Chu Xiu didn't care too much about it. With a wave of his hand, he led his people to the Long River sect. Lin Yasi had taken over his father's Nine Phoenix Sword sect, while Feng Changhe of the Long River sect had relied on his own strength to establish the Long River sect's foundation. Based on this, it was obvious that Feng Changhe was much more capable than Lin Yasi. Inside the Long River sect, Feng Changhe was personally teaching his disciples martial arts. Actually, Feng Changhe didn't know any sword techniques. His expertise lay in fist and palm techniques. Similarly, he had no intention of switching to learning sword techniques. This time, the three sects had joined forces to seize the sword technique manual. Although it wasn't essential to him, he still agreed to it. The reason was very simple. He could forego the sword techniques, but he had to accept the benefits from the other two sections. As for the friendship he'd had with Lin Yasi in the past, it was nothing compared to these benefits. At the very most, he wouldn't be so ruthless when it came to fighting. The Nine Phoenix Sword sect's strength had actually been pretty good in the past. Unfortunately, ever since Lin Yasi's father had passed away, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect had been declining year by year. If they weren't strong enough and couldn't protect their treasures, they couldn't blame others for being greedy. At this moment, a disciple ran in somewhat frantically and said, "Sect Master, the people from the Nine Phoenix Sword sect are here to fight." Feng Changhe raised his eyebrows and said, somewhat astonished, "Lin Yasi actually has the guts to do this? I've underestimated him. Let's go and take a look. Let's see what gave Lin Yasi the courage to make a move." Feng Changhe wasn't being arrogant, but he really didn't take Lin Yasi seriously. He was a martialist from the Southern Domain's Battle God sect. Even though he had been expelled from the sect, his martial arts skills were still there. A martialist like Lin Yasi simply couldn't compare to the teachings and resources that a martialist like him had received from a top-notch sect like Lin Yasi. Although the Nine Phoenix Sword sect could be traced back to the Northern Domain's mysterious Heaven Mirror, that was a matter from hundreds of years ago, and had nothing to do with the current Lin Yasi. When Feng Changhe walked out with his men, and saw that the elites of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect were all present, he sneered and said, "Lin Yasi, who are you trying to show by putting up such a big show? Don't tell me that you really think you can destroy my Long River sect with just this bit of strength?" Lin Yasi said angrily, "Feng Changhe, when you came to Fenglin County back then, I didn't mistreat you. When your Long River sect had just been established, I even gave you a lot of resources and help. Is this how you repay me now?" Feng Changhe said indifferently, "A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. That's right, Lin Yasi. Don't be too greedy and don't treat others like fools. In the past, your Nine Phoenix Sword sect offended several large sects, and was on the verge of destruction. I just happened to appear, so you used me as a shield to get some small benefits. I know all of this, but I didn't say anything. I helped you block those people. But now, you're still using the pitiful kindness from before to talk about it. Do you really think I'm an idiot? Your Nine Phoenix Sword sect can't keep the Heavenly Extinction Sword technique, but you still don't want to hand it over. Don't blame us for being ruthless." Lin Yasi looked angry and wanted to say something, but Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Enough. Aren't you tired of talking so much nonsense? It's already time to fall out with him. Who cares if he's grateful or not? Just kill him directly." Feng Changhe hadn't noticed Chu Xiu before. After all, Chu Xiu didn't deliberately reveal his aura. Coupled with his young appearance, it was easy for people to mistake him for Lin Yasi's disciple. However, Feng Changhe's expression turned solemn when he heard Chu Xiu's words. He realized that he couldn't see through the young man's cultivation level. Who exactly are you? Feng Changhe asked cautiously. He was now certain that Lin Yasi had the guts to cause trouble for him, because of this mysterious young man. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Sect leader Feng doesn't need to know who I am. You're about to die anyway, so a dead man doesn't need to know so much. How arrogant. Feng Changhe snorted coldly. Although he couldn't see through the young man's cultivation level, it didn't mean that he would just give up without a fight. He would only know who was stronger and who was weaker after a fight. Chu Xiu shook his head. He didn't want to waste time talking to Feng Changhe anymore. He broke through the formation and unsheathed the shining long saber. The moment it was unsheathed, the powerful force on the saber alone was enough to make one's heart tremble. Lin Yasi thought to himself, as expected of the successor of Gu Zun. Just this saber alone is not an ordinary item. Feng Changhe's heart skipped a beat. Anyone who could use a saber like this was definitely not an ordinary person. He formed a fist seal with his hand. In an instant, his body seemed to have connected with the ground beneath his feet. When the fist seal landed, it was like a towering mountain range. Immovable like a mountain, able to block the sun and moon. Immovable like a landslide, able to topple Mount Tai. Lin Yasi quickly said, This is the martial god sect's secret technique, moving mountain. It can be used for both offense and defense, and its fist techniques are ever-changing. Brother Chu, you must be careful. Before he could finish speaking, Chu Xiu had already slashed with his saber. In an instant, the dazzling saber gleam pierced through heaven and earth. Anything that came into contact with the saber would shatter. At this moment, everyone had the illusion that the entire world seemed to have been sliced in half by Chu Xiu's saber. When Feng Changhe's moving mountain was used for defense, it was immovable like a mountain, able to block the sun and moon. However, in the face of Chu Xiu's saber, it did not matter whether it was a mountain range or a sun or a moon. In the face of life and death, Feng Changhe let out a furious roar. He wanted to burn his blood essence for another desperate attack. However, the speed of Chu Xiu's saber was simply too fast. It was so fast that it surpassed time and space. It was so fast that it surpassed Feng Changhe's reaction speed. By the time he completely reacted, his entire body had already been sliced in half by Chu Xiu's saber. His body fell to the ground, and fresh blood stained the ground beneath his feet. At this moment, whether it was the people from the Nine Phoenix Sword sect or the Long River sect, everyone was stunned. The sect leader of a sect, an expert at the true fire spirit refinement realm, had been sliced in half by someone's saber. This was a huge blow to them. After a few breaths, the people from the Long River sect finally reacted. They screamed and fled. Chu Xiu said indifferently to Lin Yasi, who was still in a daze, Sect leader Lin, what are you waiting for? If you continue to drag this out, you will disappear without a trace. Even if you don't want to eliminate the root of the problem, the Long River sect has so many martial art disciples. Don't tell me you don't intend to accept them all? After hearing Chu Xiu's words, Lin Yasi seemed to come back to his senses. He nodded repeatedly and immediately sent his subordinates to clean up the mess. For some reason, when Lin Yasi looked at Chu Xiu now, he actually felt a slight fear. He knew why. It was because he feared Lin Yasi's strength. Feng Changhe was stronger than Lin Yasi. In the end, he couldn't even withstand a single move from Chu Xiu before being killed. Perhaps this was because he could not react in time. However, Chu Xiu's strength was even more shocking. After a long while, when the Nine Phoenix Sword sect took over the Long River sect, Lin Yasi asked, "Brother Chu, what should we do next?" Unknowingly, Lin Yasi's attitude towards Chu Xiu had unconsciously become respectful. Perhaps even he did not realize it. Looking into the distance, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Of course we'll deal with the remaining two sects in one go." Chapter 1093. The cultivators from the Celestial Absolute Celestial were slightly weaker than Chu Xiu had imagined. Perhaps it was because they had a higher starting point, but among those of the same rank, they had actually experienced less killing and tempering than the warriors of the lower realm. In the lower realm, those who could reach the true fire spirit refinement realm were the pillars of their sects and stood out from the rest. It was even more difficult for rogue cultivators. They had to fight against the heavens, the earth, and other people to reach this realm. According to Lin Yazi, Feng Changhe's strength was considered strong among the true fire spirit refinement realm martial artists in Fonglin County. He was also from a large sect. Therefore, Chu Xiu had used the breaking formula's saber intent, and attacked with all his strength. In the end, who would have thought that the strength Lin Yazi was talking about was actually this strong? This bit of strength was really not much stronger than the patriarchs of the aristocratic families that Chu Xiu had killed in the lower realm. Chu Xiu did not delay. He led the people from the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect to the other two forces, the Yao family and the Fonglin Sword Sect. Since they were all the same, he would find an opportunity to get rid of them all in one day. At this moment in the Fonglin Sword Sect, the people from the two sects had gathered together. Everyone was panicking. The development of the Daoyuotian formation Dao was much better than in the lower realm. Communication formations were things that only the top experts in the lower realm would have. In the Daoyuotian realm, basically all the sects with a bit of strength would have them. Although the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect had participated in fights between sects before, it was their first time doing something like exterminating a sect. Therefore, they were a little slow and the news spread to the Yao family and the Fonglin Sword Sect. Feng Changhe is dead? How is that possible? What kind of backer did Lin Yazi find? Could it be a mystic heaven and earth enlightening expert from the mystic heaven domain? The sect leader of the Fonglin Sword Sect was panicking. He had a good relationship with Feng Changhe. He was also the one who had dragged Feng Changhe to do this. Therefore, he naturally knew how powerful Feng Changhe was. But now, the other side said that Feng Changhe had been killed with a single slash. He couldn't believe it. The head of the Yao family was calmer than the sect leader of the Fonglin Sword Sect. He said in a low voice, "It should be impossible. Even if the Lin family is connected to the Mystic Heaven domain, the Mystic Heaven domain is far from the southern region. Can Lin Yazi predict the future, and know that we are going to deal with him in advance, so he summoned the people from the mysterious Heaven Mirror? Even if he is not from the Mystic Heaven domain, how can we deal with someone who can kill Feng Changhe with one strike?" The head of the Yao family rubbed his head with a helpless expression. But before they knew it, the Feng Changhe, the Nine Sword, the sect, Feng, and Yazi sect, Nine sect clan leader Yi family, sect Yin Xiu sect. The two of them looked at each other, and their hearts sank. How could the other party be so fast? The Feng family's eyes. Realm. The 2 points. Family were from the 9 realm. I sect Feng point, I sect Lin realm, I. A Yang sect I in the Feng realm, I Feng, I Lin sect. Of the clan. I'll give you a chance. Admit defeat, and the Feng, Yao and sect leaders will join the 9 Phoenix Sword, and I'll give you an elder position. The sect leader of the Fonglin Sword sect and the head of the Yao clan had ashen expressions. Who would want to be an elder if they could just be a sect master and sect master? Before they could say anything, Chu Xiu turned to Lin Yazi and said, "Who said we're going to let them off?" Lin Yazi was dumbfounded. "What else? Kill them all?" Chu Xiu said indifferently. "It doesn't matter if we kill the others, but do you want to keep those 2 alive? Sect leader Lin, you're the leader of a sect. Don't say such naive words again. You have to know that nurturing a tiger is a recipe for disaster. You can swallow up the Feng, Lin Yazi sect and the Yao family, but those 2 must be leaders with prestige and strength. You have to kill them before you can be safe. Otherwise, if they make use of their power to cause trouble for you, how are you going to deal with them? Since it's so troublesome, why don't we just kill them once and for all?" Lin Yazi looked at Chu Xiu dumbfounded. After witnessing Chu Xiu's strength, he also saw another side of Chu Xiu, ruthlessness. In truth, while it was common for the martial world powers of the Celestial of Absolute Heaven to fight and exterminate sects, most of them would leave a way out. This was not because Lin Yazi was soft-hearted, but because this was the custom of the Celestial of Absolute Heaven. It was an unspoken rule that everyone tacitly agreed upon. Lin Yazi had forgotten to tell Chu Xiu, and Chu Xiu had acted too quickly. Even if he had reminded him, it was too late. They had developed this habit because when the various factions came to the Daoyuotian 10,000 years ago, there weren't many of them. They had conflicts when they were in the lower realm. And these conflicts naturally wouldn't disappear just because they came to the Daluotion. Therefore, there were still battles. However, there weren't many of them, so everyone restrained themselves and tried their best not to kill each other. Therefore, after so many years, this kind of thing had evolved into an unspoken rule of the Daluotion. Unless there was a great enmity like killing one's father or stealing one's wife, no one would kill each other. Seeing Chu Xiu and Lin Yazi discussing their life and death, the Feng Lin sword sect's leader and the Yao family's leader both had expressions of fury. No matter what, they were the leaders of this faction, and they were also experts in the true fire spirit refinement realm. However, in the end, they were like a plate of food in someone else's hands, being eaten however they wanted. How could they accept this? The two of them roared angrily and charged toward Chu Xiu. The Feng Lin sword sect's leader swung his longsword, causing countless winds and clouds to surge. The sword aura was majestic. The Yao family's leader used a rod as a weapon, which was rare. He smashed it toward Chu Xiu's head, and a powerful gust of wind whistled like a shattering mountain. Fighting 1 against 2, Lin Yazi still wanted to go up and help. However, before he could do anything, Chu Xiu had already taken a step forward. In an instant, countless world annihilation flames were released. Those pitch-black flames almost instantly enveloped the two of them, and countless intense gusts of wind started to burn. The world annihilation flames that could incinerate everything were far too powerful and evil. It gave the Feng Lin sword sect's leader and the Yao family's leader a huge shock. The Yao family's leader gritted his teeth, and the vital energy and blood in his body erupted. He used his full strength, and his entire body emitted a golden glow. Only then did he break through the envelopment of the world annihilation flames, smashing down toward Chu Xiu with his rod. This is your rod technique. Weak to weak. There's no aura at all. What right do you have to use such a fierce weapon? Chu Xiu waved his hand casually. In an instant, the Yao family's leader discovered to his shock that the vital energy and blood in his entire body seemed to be out of his control, gushing toward Chu Xiu crazily. Today, I'll let you see what a true rod technique is. Countless amounts of fresh blood were drawn out by Chu Xiu, and the Yao family's leader's body fell onto the ground like a dried corpse. He was only left with a single breath. The fresh blood condensed in Chu Xiu's hand, turning into a blood-colored coiling dragon rod. He smashed it toward the Feng Lin sword sect's leader. The Black Tortoise True Technique's Tiger Roar rod was displayed. Although Chu Xiu only knew this one rod technique, the Black Tortoise True Technique was still the Black Tortoise True Technique after all. Each cultivation technique was extraordinary. As Chu Xiu's cudgel landed, countless cudgel shadows enveloped the Feng Lin sword sect's sect leader. The powerful force smashed into midair, emitting a series of tiger roars. In less than 3 breaths' time, the Feng Lin sword sect's sect leader was smashed into meat paste by his cudgel. The Yao family's leader, who was left with a single breath, finally breathed his last when he saw this scene. He had practiced rod techniques for his entire life, but in the end, he realized that his rod techniques were inferior to a saber user. He didn't know whether he died because he couldn't take it anymore or because he was angered to death. Chu Xiu didn't make any more moves after dealing with the two of them as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The rest was left to Lin Yazi. If Lin Yazi couldn't even get rid of these people, he would be too useless as a sect leader. Actually, to sects like the Yao family or the Feng Lin sword sect, if you said they were strong, they only had a true fire spirit refinement realm martial artist. However, if you said they were weak, they still had a true fire spirit refinement realm martial artist. This was a very awkward situation. Only one person would be able to determine who was strong and who was weak. However, most of the sects were in such a situation. Hence, after Chu Xiu dealt with the person in charge, the others wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Lin Yazi stood there with a look of disbelief in his eyes. Fenglin County was only so big. Usually, the sects that fought the most were the few sections. Of course, most of the time, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect was at a disadvantage. In the end, the 3 sects were all annihilated in a single day. This made Lin Yazi feel like it was unreal. Chu Xiu didn't want the things he had obtained from annexing the 3 sections. He gave them all to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. He had obtained the things that Dugu Weiwei had left behind. The 8 Revolution and 9 Revolution Supreme Grade pills could be eaten like jelly beans. Of course, he wouldn't be interested in these things. However, he asked Lin Yazi to find the records of the 3 sects for him. He wanted to see if there was anything about Dugu Weiwa and Ning Xuanji in the records of the 3 sections. In the end, after spending a few days looking through these things, Chu Xiu was still a little disappointed. He didn't gain anything at all. Among the 3 sects, the Long River sect was founded by Feng Changhe himself. Therefore, there was no history at all. It only recorded some things about him. The Feng Lin sword sect had only been established for 200 to 300 years. Its ancestors were also unaffiliated cultivators, so it didn't have much history. Only the Yao family's legacy had been passed down for more than 500 years. However, there were only some scattered records. There was no description of Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji. In the same few days, the entire Fenglin County seemed to have been turned upside down, and countless waves were stirred up. Chapter 1094. As a large county in the eastern domain, Fenglin County was usually very peaceful, and there were not many major disturbances. This was because everyone's strength was about the same. Even if the major sects attacked the 9 Phoenix Sword sect this time, it was only after the 3 sects joined forces. If there was only one sect, they might not have dared to make a move. Now, however, the 3 major sects were completely wiped out within a day. This matter could not be described as ripples in stagnant water. It was like throwing a bomb into a pool. Everyone knew what kind of person Lin Yazi was. He would never do such a thing, so a group of people went to inquire about Chu Xiu's identity. Chu Xiu did not ask Lin Yazi to hide his identity. He didn't want to play the pig to eat the tiger. He wanted to obtain more things and find more information about Dugu Weiwa. In fact, the best way was to directly enter the celestial Daoyuo. What kind of information one could obtain depended entirely on what kind of status one had. For example, in the lower realm, some secrets about the great ancient calamity were just legends to ordinary cultivators, but they were very clear to those who truly stood at the top. Therefore, although the sects in Fenglin County did not find out about Chu Xiu's specific identity, they knew that the person who helped the 9 Phoenix Sword sect was a primeval sovereign's successor. Although most people were still a little confused about this matter, they were still envious of the 9 Phoenix Sword sect's luck to be able to curry favor with a primeval sovereign's successor. In the 9 Phoenix Sword sect, Lin Fengwu carefully knocked on the door of Chu Xiu's house and asked, "Senior Chu, are you still looking for clues about your old rival?" Chu Xiu nodded and asked, "Why? Did you find anything?" Lin Fengwu asked in return, "Are you still looking for clues about a Dao expert?" Chu Xiu had not actually mentioned anything about Ning Xuanji to Lin Fengwu. In his opinion, Dugu Weiwei was so good at stirring up trouble and being so high profile. Yet he did not leave any clues. Ning Xuanji would certainly not leave any clues behind. However, since he had the time, he had also instructed some disciples of the 9 Phoenix Sword sect to pay attention to this information when they were copying the records of the 3 sects, so it was normal for Lin Fengwu to know about it. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's right. That Taoist expert was a good friend of my ancestor. Back then he also fought with that demon, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Therefore, when I left the mountain this time, my master also asked me to find out if that Taoist expert still exists, if there is any inheritance left behind and so on." Lin Fengwu said excitedly, "If that's the case, I might be able to find some clues." Chu Xiu quickly asked, "What kind of clues?" Having been in the Daoyu Ocean for so long, Fenglin County was not considered remote. It was one of the large counties in the eastern region. Although the 9 Phoenix Sword sect and the other sects were not considered strong, they were not weak either. However, Chu Xiu did not find any clues from them. This made him wonder if his guess was right. Now that he had finally found a trace of clues, Chu Xiu could not help but feel a little excited. Lin Fengwu took out something that looked like a notebook and said, "These are anecdotes written by some media in the pugilistic world. I don't like the boring Daoyu Ocean history that my father told me, so I've collected a lot of such things. There's a description of the Hunyuan sect's ancestor. It seems to be similar to the Taoist expert that official Chu is looking for." Chu Xiu took the notebook and flipped through it, carefully reading the contents. The so-called Hunyuan sect was a large Taoist sect in the northern region. It was not a large sect that had been passed down for 10,000 years, but had risen 500 years ago. According to the notebook, the ancestor of the Hunyuan sect, Tao Lord Xianzhen, was just a little Taoist priest who stuttered when interpreting the lots for others 500 years ago. In the end, he met an expert and exchanged a pot of dog meat for the expert's guidance. In exchange, he obtained a powerful cultivation technique. In the end, he had an epiphany and encountered countless obstacles along the way. In the end, he became a Taoist sovereign in the martial immortal realm. He founded the Hunyuan sect and became a large sect in the northern region. The things written in the notebook were all exaggerated. It described Tao Lord Xianzhen as being like Long Outyin, who offended people wherever he went. Then, he kept slapping people's faces all the way until he became a Tao Lord. In reality, Tao Lord Xianzhen was a modest and kind person. When he preached, he never hid anything from others. As long as one focused on the Tao, he would answer any question for them. There were even a few love scenes with Tao Lord Xianzhen. There were even a few sex scenes. However, the key parts were torn out. Chu Xiu glanced at Lin Fengwu, who immediately turned her head away with a red face. She was a little embarrassed. Although there were many exaggerated parts, the description of the expert from the Tao sect seemed to Chu Xiu to be Ning Xuanji. If other people saw this description, they would definitely not think of Ning Xuanji. However, Chu Xiu was certain because he was one of the few people in the pugilistic world who knew the true face of the old Taoist Ning Xuanji. The old Taoist Ning Xuanji was not an immortal. On the contrary, he had a very bad character. According to the description in the notebook, the expert from the Tao sect made things difficult for Tao Lord Xianzhen at the beginning. He tricked him into stealing the dogs of the farmers at the foot of the mountain to make dog meat pot. His words were also full of vulgarities. His character was very bad. Other than the fact that he was dressed like a beggar, unlike Ning Xuanji, he was almost exactly the same as Ning Xuanji. Of course, this could also be done by the anemophilia himself. Perhaps in his opinion, the senior expert must have a strange character, and did not care about his appearance. Chu Xiu touched his chin. 500 years ago, their characters were so similar. If this was a coincidence, even Chu Xiu himself would not believe it. Lin Fengwu asked cautiously, "Senior Chu, is this information useful to you?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Yes, it's very useful. It can even be said that this is the most useful clue I've obtained in a while." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Lin Fengwu immediately revealed a look of joy. "By the way, go and call your father over. I have something to tell him." After Lin Fengwu went out, she was pulled aside by Zhao Liangyu after just a few steps. "Junior sister, what did I tell you? Chu Xiu is not a good person. Why are you still so close to him?" Zhao Liangyu looked distressed, but there was a hint of fear on his face. He was also present when Chu Xiu went on a killing spree the last time. Seeing the sect masters who usually opposed the Nine Phoenix Sword sect all die at the hands of Chu Xiu as easily as killing chickens, it was impossible for Zhao Liangyu not to fear Chu Xiu. But fear was fear. He could still feel from Chu Xiu's body that his schemes were definitely not as simple as Lin Fengwu and Lin Yazi thought. Lin Fengwu looked at Zhao Liangyu helplessly and said, "Senior brother, Official Chu is now a guest of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect." Such a big crisis this time was also resolved by Official Chu's help. It's not good for you to always slander Official Chu like this with prejudice. I still have things to do, so you're on your own. After saying that, Lin Fengwu directly left, leaving behind a sullen Zhao Liangyu. In all honesty, he was speaking the truth this time. A moment later, Lin Yazi arrived at Chu Xiu's room. "Brother Chu, why are you looking for me? Do you lack any cultivation resources?" "Don't worry, Brother Chu, if you lack anything, you can tell me. As long as the Nine Phoenix Sword sect has it, it will definitely not be left out." Recently, Lin Yazi had been riding on the crest of success. Previously, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect could be said to have been suppressed, but this time, they finally turned the tables and even faintly had the power of the #1 sect in Fonglin County. After all, the martial arts forces in Fonglin County were not much different. This time, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect directly destroyed the 3 major sections. Who could have such power? Therefore Lin Yazi was in a good mood now. His attitude towards Chu Xiu was even a little too warm, as if he was afraid that Chu Xiu would leave the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Sect Master Lin, are you happy now?" Lin Yazi nodded subconsciously, then shook his head awkwardly and said, "A little happy, but I still have a sense of propriety. I'm not too happy." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's good. This time, I called you here to discuss the integration of the martial arts forces in the entire Fonglin County." Lin Yazi was stunned and said, "What integration?" Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "Sect Master Lin, with my help, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect has already become the strongest sect in the entire Fonglin County. Wouldn't it be a pity if we don't make use of this advantage? Right now, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect is only the number one force that people talk about. Why don't we make it the real number one force? Therefore, I decided to use the Nine Phoenix Sword sect as the core, and call on all the martial arts forces in the entire Fonglin County to form an alliance. Everyone will take out their respective cultivation techniques and books, and share a portion of their resources with the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Of course, it won't be for nothing. Every once in a while, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect will hold an arena competition, and the young geniuses who win can come to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect to receive meticulous nurturing. The resources will all be provided by the Nine Phoenix Sword sect." When Chu Xiu finished speaking, Lin Yazi was already dumbfounded. Was Chu Xiu still speaking like a human? This was simply slaughtering all the martial arts forces in the entire Fonglin County like pigs and dogs. Even if his Nine Phoenix Sword sect was the one who benefited, Lin Yazi couldn't bear to listen to it anymore. Cultivation techniques and books were the most important things in each sect. Wanting them to take them out was simply asking for their lives. Then, taking their resources to nurture their disciples was simply like wool coming from a sheep's back. How much the Nine Phoenix Sword sect could embezzle was up to them. Moreover, they had to send their disciples to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect for nurturing. Couldn't they nurture them themselves? After the nurturing was over, would those disciples belong to them, or the Nine Phoenix Sword sect? Lin Yazi dared to guarantee that if he did that, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect would directly become the target of public criticism, and be besieged by all the martial arts forces in the entire Fonglin County. Chapter 1095. The conditions proposed by Chu Xiu could no longer be described as excessive. It was simply taking a dump on Chu Xiu's head. No sect would agree to such conditions. Lin Yazi thought that Chu Xiu was so eager for quick success because he had no experience in the martial world. Therefore he kindly advised, "Brother Chu, this is not how things should be done. Although your imagination is correct, what if you force the other party into a corner, and everyone joins forces? What should we do then? Officials can force people to rebel, let alone these unruly martial arts sections." Chu Xiu waved his hand casually and said, "If anyone dares to rebel, then just kill them. They can't beat me anyway. This is a multiple choice question. Live or die, it's a very easy choice." Lin Yazi was dumbfounded. He was shocked by Chu Xiu's worldview. Chu Xiu said, "Sect leader Lin, these are all taught to me by my master. He once said that there are so many messy things in the martial world. They seem complicated, but most of the time, only one thing is needed to solve them, and that is strength. Schemes are no match for fists and swords. As long as you beat them into submission, they will do it even if you ask them to eat shit, let alone defecate on their heads. Although it sounds crude, it's not. Anyone will make such a choice in the face of the threat of death." Seeing that Lin Yazi still wanted to say something, Chu Xiu sighed again. He pulled Lin Yazi and said, "Sect leader Lin, in fact, everything I've done is for you. You know who I am. I'm the successor of Gu Zun. When I finish my training, I will leave sooner or later. Now that the Nine Phoenix Sword sect has me as a guest, they can protect everything and their status. But what about after I leave? Will the Nine Phoenix Sword sect be able to protect everything?" With the help of Gu Zun's successor, Mengxinghe, Cold River City became a top sect in the world. But if Cold River City didn't have such strength, what would the result be? They would be torn to pieces by the sects that had grudges against them in the past. After I left the mountain, the first person I met was Miss Lin. And the first sect I met was the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. This is karma, and it's also fate. So I can't bear to see the scene of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect being annihilated after I return to the sect. So while I'm still here, the Nine Phoenix Sword sect must develop quickly to the point where no one dares to touch it. The entire Fonglin County was only so big. It was too difficult to develop step by step, so they could only rely on plundering. Plundering other sects' resources, other sects' disciples, other sects' everything. Sect leader Lin, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Think about it carefully. Lin Yazi was confused by Chu Xiu's words. After thinking it over, he gritted his teeth and agreed. He was just a timid and cautious person, but he was not short-sighted and brainless. Chu Xiu's plan was indeed not harmful to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. If he didn't agree to it, was he supposed to reject it? Therefore, when the Nine Phoenix Sword sect spread the news to the entire Fonglin County, all the forces in the Fonglin County thought that Lin Yazi had gone mad. Fonglin Commandery had been peaceful for so many years. What exactly did Lin Yazi want? Wasn't he afraid of becoming the target of everyone and being attacked by others? Later, everyone realized that Lin Yazi was really not afraid. The people from the Nine Phoenix Sword sect had said that if they obeyed, it would be fine. Otherwise, they would end up like the Long River sect and the other two sections. Lin Yazi didn't have that kind of strength, but Chu Xiu did. Some time ago, when Chu Xiu had killed those three people, many cultivators had witnessed it. Everyone could attest to Chu Xiu's strength and ruthlessness. Therefore, to Chu Xiu's surprise, when the news spread throughout the entire Fonglin County, Chu Xiu thought that they were going to join forces to resist. He was already prepared to kill. However, the martial arts forces in Fonglin County were terrified. That's right, they were terrified. Although there were people secretly cursing Chu Xiu and the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, in fact, no one stood up to resist openly. This made Chu Xiu feel very bored. To think that the sects of the exalted heaven, or rather the sects of the Fonglin County, would actually be so cowardly. How boring. In the lower realm, when Chu Xiu was suppressing the Northern Yen pugilistic world, he had to kill wave after wave of people before he could suppress the entire Northern Yen pugilistic world. Even so, when the Taoist sects and Buddhist sects intervened in the Northern Yen martial world, these guys still dared to stand up and cause trouble. It could be said that they were very tenacious. In the end, when Chu Xiu only killed 3 people, they were so scared that they did not dare to move. Their endurance was a little too low. Although it was Chu Xiu who was convenient, it made Chu Xiu feel a little uncomfortable. After thinking about it, Chu Xiu finally came to a conclusion. It was not that the Daluotian warriors were afraid of death, but that they lived too comfortably and comfortably. The Daluotian world was rich in the essence of heaven and earth and rich in natural resources. Even a sect like the Nine Phoenix Sword sect did not lack pills and resources. What they lacked was people. As long as the disciples were talented enough, it was actually not a problem for a sect like the Nine Phoenix Sword sect to raise an expert. It was the same for the other sections. Therefore, in Chu Xiu's opinion, the martial arts sects in the celestial Daluo were very idle. They were so idle that they could casually preach about the Tao. Even people from opposing sects were allowed to listen to their preaching. In fact, if one's preaching could convince the other party, it would be a very honorable thing to do. But in the lower realm, the Jianghu forces could be said to be scheming and fighting all day long. They fought for resources, talents, and even reputation. From the moment they stepped into the Jianghu, most of the low-level Jianghu forces were already prepared to kill and be killed. Of course, they would not give in so easily. This could also be compared to the environment of Green City. In the harsher Green City, the warriors there did not care about their own lives. For them, fighting was fighting against the heavens. If they did not fight, they would die. This kind of mentality was naturally different. Of course, when the Daluotian forces surrendered, it was more convenient for Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was still not interested in the kung fu books of these forces. He just took out some historical secrets recorded in their sects and flipped through them one by one, looking for clues. After searching for half a month, but to no avail, Chu Xiu did not bother to continue looking, and was ready to go to Fonglin County. After coming to the Daluotian, in fact, Chu Xiu was still a little nervous. After all, he was an outsider, a person who did not belong here. Fortunately, after he came to the Dalyu Ocean, he met people who were not as strong as him, such as Lin Fengwu. If Chu Xiu was like the unlucky guy who came to the mortal world from the Daluo heaven and met Feng Qinglan, a strong man of the metaphysic state, and was killed as soon as he came out, he would definitely cry. But now through the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect, Chu Xiu had a certain foundation in the Dalyu Ocean, so he did not need to be as careful as before. As soon as Chu Xiu walked out of the mountain gate, Lin Fengwu caught up with him. She followed behind Chu Xiu and said, "Senior Chu, are you going to go out?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I have been out for so long, but I haven't had a look around Fonglin County yet." Hearing this, Lin Fengwu immediately said, "That's great. Let me be your guide." Without hesitation, Chu Xiu just nodded casually. He could see that Lin Fengwu seemed to have a good impression of him, or maybe it was just awe and respect. In fact, Lin Fengwu's thoughts were similar to Chu Xiu's. She did not have the character of a lady from a noble family. On the contrary, she was very strong and persistent in martial arts. It was also because of this character that Lin Fengwu could surpass Zhao Liangyu's strength even though she was a woman. When she met Chu Xiu, who was not much older than she was, but in terms of martial arts, she could only look up to him. Only then did she develop these slightly complicated thoughts. Following behind Chu Xiu, Lin Fengwu said cautiously, "Senior Chu, you are so strong now, but you don't have any secret or anything like that." In the past, Lin Fengwu would not have dared to ask this. But now that Chu Xiu had become a foreign elder of the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect, and he had even helped the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect become the #1 sect in Fonglin County, their relationship was naturally not ordinary, so she was a little bolder. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Secret? The path of martial arts is like rowing a boat against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. How can there be any secret? Even if you have the supply of countless heavenly and earthly treasures, allowing you to advance very quickly, the power obtained from external objects will also make your level unstable, and your combat strength will be far inferior to martial artists of the same level. You only need to remember one thing. Martial arts is the path of war and killing." Lin Fengwu said doubtfully, "But I heard the Heaven and Earth Arcane Insight Powerhouse from the Eastern Region's Imperial Sky Pavilion giving a lecture. He said a lot about sensing heaven and earth, as well as karma, and so on." Chu Xiu looked at Lin Fengwu and said, "Do you have the right to sense this world now? Do you have the right to interfere with karma?" Lin Fengwu blushed and shook her head. She did not understand these things back then, so how could she know? That's it. That powerhouse's martial arts belongs to that powerhouse's comprehension. You haven't reached his level yet, so why do you want to learn from him? Based on your current level, the most effective way to increase your strength is to continuously fight and kill others. The strength that is tempered in fierce battles of life and death is the most stable and strongest. As for those things that powerhouse said, you won't understand until you reach his level. But when you reach that level, you will naturally understand without anyone teaching you. Lin Fengwu nodded as if she was suddenly enlightened. What Chu Xiu said was actually much more practical than the great principles that those powerhouses preached. At the very least, Chu Xiu gave her many suggestions on what she should do now, and not a bunch of extremely mysterious things that people could not understand and could only guess randomly. As they chatted along the way, Lin Fengwu had already brought Chu Xiu to the largest city in Fonglin County, the Anzhou Prefecture. Chapter 1096. The Anzhou Prefecture was the center of the entire Fonglin County. It was also the largest prefecture in the entire county. After entering the Anzhou Prefecture, Chu Xiu looked around. Apart from the architectural style, it was similar to the prefectures in the lower realm. The only difference was that the martial arts culture in the Anzhou Prefecture was very strong. This was not only reflected in the number of cultivators, but also in the surrounding shops. After all, the prefectures in the lower realm were mainly populated by commoners. Therefore, even in a capital like Yanjing City, the surrounding shops were mostly made up of cloth stores and medicine shops for commoners. In the Anzhou Prefecture, there were all sorts of weapons, cultivation elixirs, and all sorts of miscellaneous items used by cultivators to set up formations and refine weapons. Among them, there were even some shops that openly sold ancient books of cultivation methods. Although they were all inferior goods, no one in the lower realm would openly open a shop to sell ancient books of cultivation methods. Lin Fengwu introduced to Chu Xiu. The Anzhou Prefecture was the core of Fenglin County from the very beginning. After our ancestors came to the Daoyu Ocean 10,000 years ago, the Anzhou Prefecture was the first city in Fenglin County. The entire Fenglin County was spread out with the Anzhou Prefecture as the core. Chu Xiu nodded and suddenly asked, "Who's in charge of the Anzhou Prefecture?" There was no imperial court in the Daoyu Ocean. Therefore, there had to be someone in charge of the prefectures where people gathered. The prefectural governor is in charge. Then, who's in charge of the prefectural governor? Lin Fengwu said. The entire Fenglin County is under the jurisdiction of the Eastern Region's great sect, the Imperial Sky Pavilion. The prefectural governor is very powerful. I heard that he used to be an inner sect managing elder of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. He came to Fenglin County to be the prefectural governor, because he's very powerful. Chu Xiu raised an eyebrow. The Daoyu Ocean used sects to govern the pugilistic world. Although it might not be as detailed as the imperial court in the lower realm, the Daoyu Ocean martial arts culture was strong and there were too many cultivators. It was more effective to use such a method to govern. Even a major sect like the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect is under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Sky Pavilion? Then what does this county governor usually manage? The people of Fenglin County were already used to being under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. When Chu Xiu asked such a sudden question, Lin Fengwu thought about it and said, "It doesn't seem like we're in charge of too many things. The entire Fenglin County is under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion. Naturally, we have to pay a portion of the tribute to the Imperial Heaven Pavilion every year. However, it's not a lot. At the very least, the sects in Fenglin County can afford it. Apart from that, it seemed like the county governor did not need to care too much. It was said that when the ancestors first came to the Daoyu Ocean, this place was filled with dense forests and countless ferocious beasts. The Dilua mountain range was practically a forbidden area. Therefore, in the beginning, the various county governors were also in charge of hunting the ferocious beasts and guarding against their attacks. Thousands of years later, most of those vicious beasts had been hunted down and refined into pills and weapons. Some of the more precious ones had even gone extinct, causing the price of vicious beast materials to increase by several times. Therefore, the county governor seems to be very free now. Unless a few sects cause too much of a ruckus and someone begs the county governor to pay him enough tribute, the county governor will only step in to mediate the conflict between the two sections. At this point, Lin Fengwu said a little awkwardly, "Actually, I misunderstood Father when I objected to him giving the Heaven Absolute Sword manual to the three sections. Father's original plan was to stall for time and teach the county governor the Heaven Absolute Sword manual in exchange for his mediation. He would rather give everything to the county governor than let them take advantage of the situation. Who would have thought that I would fall out with those sects and be hunted down by them? Father's plan fell through." Chu Xiu did not care about Lin Fengwu's awkwardness. He stroked his chin and thought that the Imperial Heaven Pavilion had some talents. The county governor of Fenglin County seemed to be ruling by doing nothing, and did not oppress the other sects too much. However, just based on how they tried to smooth things over, who knew how many benefits they had received? If there was conflict between the two sects, the county governor would side with whoever gave the items. Although it was said that he was mediating, the side that had the upper hand would definitely lose out. Therefore, in the end, the only one who benefited was the county governor of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion. The other sects got nothing. The reason why the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect was able to successfully destroy the three sects this time was because Chu Xiu had acted too quickly. He did not give them a chance to react at all. If he had been a little slower, and these people had caused a ruckus to the county governor's office, the county governor might have intervened. The other sects in Fenglin County did not resist the Nine Phoenix Sword Sect. Apart from the few reasons that Chu Xiu had speculated, the county governor of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion was also one of the reasons. They were even used to spending money to avert disasters. Although the Nine Phoenix Sword sect had gone overboard, it was not to the point where they would lose their lives. Therefore, they could still tolerate it and were willing to tolerate it. Regarding the county governor of Fenglin County, Chu Xiu noted it down. As long as he continued to develop in Fenglin County, he would have to deal with this county governor in the future. Just as Chu Xiu was thinking about this, Lin Fengwu's expression suddenly turned ugly. Chu Xiu followed Lin Fengwu's gaze and saw a group of young martial artists eating and drinking in a restaurant. They were said to be young, but in fact their cultivation was not weak. The lowest realm was the unity of heaven and man. 2 of them had even reached the real pellet state. In the lower realm, this kind of strength was enough to be ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu list. Enemies. Lin Fengwu let out a long breath and shook her head. Not exactly enemies, but there are some grudges. One of them is Wen Donglai, the young master of the Wind Smell Pavilion. He once pursued me a few years ago, but I rejected him, so he held a grudge. The Wind Smell Pavilion Master is in charge of all kinds of news and intelligence. He also has the largest martial arts trading hall in the Anzhou Prefecture, which is used to accept martial artists to trade various things, as well as all kinds of news and intelligence. When Donglai took advantage of this and spread all kinds of rumors about me in the trading hall. During that time, I didn't even dare to go out. In the end, it was my father who came forward and made a big deal out of it. Only then did the Wind Smell Pavilion withdraw the rumors. However, the Wind Smell Pavilion has a good relationship with many martial arts forces in Fenglin County. I couldn't do anything to the other party, so this matter was left unsettled. Chu Xiu's attention at this time was not on Lin Fengwu's little grudge, but on the Wind Smell Pavilion. The other party turned out to specialize in selling intelligence, which also belonged to the category of anemophilia. It could be said to be a low-level version of the wind-sweeping building. Since this is the case, will there be any detailed information in the other party's hands? At this time, the few young masters in the restaurant also saw Lin Fengwu. One of them, who was dressed in bright yellow luxurious clothes, stood up and sneered. "So it's Miss Lin. Miss Lin, you're doing very well now. You found a backer, and even your Nine Phoenix Sword sect is showing off in Fenglin County. Your influence is even greater than the prefectural governor's manor. I wonder if Miss Lin has slept with them personally?" Haha. Lin Fengwu was so angry that her face turned red. She pointed the sword in her hand at the young master and shouted, "Wen Donglai, if you talk nonsense again, believe it or not, I will tear your mouth apart." Seeing Lin Fengwu's fierce look, Wen Donglai subconsciously took half a step back. This woman was very scary when she went crazy. She wasn't just talking tough, but she could really do such things. However, when he thought of the number of people on his side today, what was there to be afraid of? As soon as he straightened his back, someone next to him pulled him and said, "Brother One, forget it. Now that the Nine Phoenix Sword sect is in the limelight, and with the help of the Primeval's successor, they may be the next Cold River City. Don't provoke Lin Fengwu at this time." Wen Donglai would have been fine if he hadn't heard this, but he immediately sneered and said, "Next Cold River City? Does the Nine Phoenix Sword sect deserve it? The one who helped Cold River City rise is the most famous of the primeval sovereigns, the Galaxy Unfettered Cultivator, a supreme powerhouse who could debate with the 3 pristine temples Dao in the past. What about the primeval successor of the Nine Phoenix Sword sect? He's sneaking around and doesn't even dare to reveal his name. Who knows who he is? Don't imagine the primeval successor to be too mysterious. Don't forget that in Daoyuotian history, many primeval sovereigns' successors were expelled because they didn't meet the standards. Many primeval sovereigns' successors met with accidents along the way, causing the inheritance of their lineage to be damaged and their strength to plummet. These are all common occurrences. Don't be fooled by the Nine Phoenix Sword sect's glory now. We don't know what will happen in the future. The moment he said this, Wen Donglai and the others immediately felt an immense pressure descend upon them. And that pressure came from the young man next to Lin Fengwu. It was just a simple pressure, but it had already caused the weather to change, causing the sky above Wen Donglai and the others to instantly be covered with dark clouds. With a loud bang, Wen Donglai and the others finally couldn't hold on anymore. The floor under their feet cracked, and they fell from the second floor to the first floor. Chu Xiu walked up to them and said indifferently, "I'm not used to raising my head to talk to people. Also, who was the one who said that he didn't know who I was? Now I'll stand up and show him who I really am." At this moment, everyone knew who the person in front of them was. The entire Fenglin prefecture knew Chu Xiu's name, but they didn't know what Chu Xiu looked like. Apart from the people from the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, the speed at which the other three sects were annihilated was too fast. It was so fast that they didn't even have time to react before they were killed by Chu Xiu. Coupled with the fact that Chu Xiu had been living in seclusion during this period, the only cultivators who knew what Chu Xiu looked like were the people from the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Although when Donglai had been clamoring about the primeval sovereign's successor, when Chu Xiu really appeared in front of him, he was so scared that he couldn't even speak. At this time, a middle-aged cultivator of the true fire spirit refinement stage walked over from the other side of the long street. When he saw this scene, his expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly walked up to Chu Xiu, bowed respectfully and said, "Are you the primeval sovereign's successor, young Master Chu?" A group of ignorant children, talking nonsense here after drinking some yellow wine. I hope young Master Chu can be magnanimous and not stoop to their level. Chapter 1097. This true fire spirit refinement realm martial artist who rushed over could be said to be extremely humble, even to the extent that Chu Xiu could not bear to reprimand the other party. Chu Xiu asked indifferently, "Which family are you from?" That middle-aged man smiled and said, "This one is Toyama Zhou family's family head, Zhou Feng. My son is insensible and mixed with them. Please forgive him, young Master Chu." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Actually, I really hate it when people tell me not to lower myself to someone's level. The person involved is not you, so what right do you have to say that? I won't lower myself to his level, then lower myself to yours, how about it?" Hearing Chu Xiu say so, that middle-aged man's expression suddenly changed. But Chu Xiu continued, "But I, Chu Xiu, am not an unreasonable person. Your son did not say anything wrong to the others. I naturally won't blame them." Just as Zhou Feng just heaved a sigh of relief, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "But some people have to be responsible for their actions when they say something wrong. For example, this Wind Smell Pavilion fellow. I'll detain him. You should know the Wind Smell Pavilion's people. Tell them to hand over all the information in the Wind Smell Pavilion and their various ancient books to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect, and his son will be fine. This is a small punishment as a warning to others. This is equivalent to a lesson." Zhou Feng's expression could not help changing slightly when he heard this. Chu Xiu doing this could be said to want the Wind Smell Pavilion's life. For other sects, even if Chu Xiu wanted their cultivation methods, it did not matter. As long as there were people, they could still make a comeback. But for the Wind Smell Pavilion, those information and so on were accumulated over hundreds of years. It could be said to be where their lifeline lay. In the end, it was taken away by Chu Xiu, then the Wind Smell Pavilion might as well just disband. Just when Zhou Feng was about to say something, Chu Xiu directly said, "Zhou clan head, this matter has nothing to do with you. You are only responsible for delivering a message. You should be able to do such a small thing, right?" Under the intense gaze of Chu Xiu, Zhou Feng had no choice but to nod. After such an incident, Chu Xiu didn't have the mood to stroll around. He directly asked Lin Fengwu to bring Wen Donglai back to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect. After Chu Xiu left, the young master of the Zhou clan muttered, "This Gu Zun's successor is a little too overbearing and petty. Brother Wen only said a few bad things about him. And he wants the lifeline of the Wind Smell Pavilion?" As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Feng slapped him across the face. The young master of the Zhou family looked at his father in disbelief. In all these years, the number of times his father had hit him could be counted on one hand. "Shut up, unfilial son. Remember, don't say things you shouldn't say. It doesn't matter if others are overbearing or petty. You don't have the right to say anything. You just need to watch your mouth." The young master of the Zhou family was shocked when he saw his father's serious expression. He didn't dare say another word. Zhou Feng looked in the direction in which Chu Xiu had left and sighed. A storm is coming. Fonglin County is no longer peaceful. In the past, Fonglin County had been peaceful for so many years, not because the warriors of Fonglin County were easy to talk to, but because everyone's strength was about the same. They fought with each other, and it was only a small skirmish. Therefore, in the entire Fonglin County, there had not been an extermination of a family for 200 or 300 years. Now, with the arrival of Chu Xiu, this powerful force had completely broken the peace of Fonglin County. Everyone would have to be careful in the future. After returning to the Nine Phoenix Sword sect with Wendonglai, Chu Xiu asked Lin Fengwu to lock Wendonglai up in a random place while he went to look through the information records. When Zhao Liangyu saw that Chu Xiu and Lin Fengwu had returned together, he was burning with jealousy. However, his expression changed when he saw Wendonglai behind them. After Lin Fengwu sealed Wendonglai's cultivation and locked him in an empty secret room, Zhao Liangyu found an opportunity to enter the secret room. The moment he saw Zhao Liangyu, Wendonglai cried out emotionally, "Brother Zhao, save me!" The entire Nine Phoenix Sword sect might not know that Zhao Liangyu was actually good friends with Wendonglai. The two of them had a good relationship. The last time Lin Fengwu and Wendonglai had clashed, Zhao Liangyu had actually been the instigator. Zhao Liangyu had been afraid that Lin Fengwu would leave him and marry someone else, so he had deliberately let Wendonglai ruin her reputation. Then he had comforted Lin Fengwu and expressed that he didn't despise her and so on. He hadn't expected the matter to blow up in the end, so much so that it couldn't be contained. It was only when Lin Yazi appeared that the matter was resolved. Zhao Liangyu hurriedly asked, "Brother Wen, what's wrong? Why are you locked up here?" Wendonglai had a gloomy look on his face as he said, "Isn't it all because of Chu Xiu? This person even said that he's some primeval successor, but in the end, he's so narrow-minded. I only said a few bad things about him, and he captured me and locked me up here. He even wanted my father to exchange all the information records and ancient books of the windswept pavilion for me. He's practically asking for the lifeblood of the windswept pavilion." Zhao Liangyu frowned and said, "Chu Xiu isn't a good person. You could have provoked anyone, but you had to provoke him. This is troublesome. You must know that even I have to avoid him in the Nine Phoenix Sword sect." Wendonglai gritted his teeth and said, "Let me out first. When I go back, I'll ask my father to come forward and ask the prefectural governor to help talk things over. I don't believe that he won't give face to others, but could it be that he won't give face to the prefectural governor as well?" Hearing that Wendonglai wanted him to let him out, Zhao Liangyu hesitated. He was captured by Chu Xiu after all. If he let him out now, wouldn't it be a little bad? Wouldn't it offend Chu Xiu? Seeing Zhao Liangyu's hesitant look, Wendonglai snorted coldly and said, "Brother Zhao, you and I have been friends for so many years. You won't refuse this favor, right? Don't forget, I helped you a great deal before. Say, if the matter with Lin Fengwu the other time is known by your master and Lin Fengwu, what do they think?" Hearing this, Zhao Liangyu's expression involuntarily changed. That matter was also because he was burning with jealousy back then, and he acted a little too rashly. Now, if master and junior sister found out, he wouldn't be able to stay in the Nine Phoenix Sword sect anymore. Rubbing his head, Zhao Liangyu suddenly said, "You're saying that this matter was entirely decided by Chu Xiu alone, and master doesn't know?" Wendonglai nodded and said, "Anyway, from the beginning to the end, your master never showed up, so he probably doesn't know." Zhao Liangyu's eyes darted around and said, "I can let you out, but you have to let your father go to the prefectural governor to help suppress Chu Xiu." Wendonglai snorted lightly and said, "Don't worry, I know that even without you telling me. Since I've already offended Chu Xiu, then if I don't want to live with my tail between my legs in Fonglin Commandery in the future, I can only think of a way to suppress Chu Xiu." Zhao Liangyu nodded and thought of a way to get an ordinary Nine Phoenix Sword sect disciple's uniform, and just like that, he smoothly brought Wendonglai out. A sect like the Nine Phoenix Sword sect had never imprisoned anyone before, and they didn't even have a jail cell. That secret chamber was only used by the Nine Phoenix Sword sect disciples for closed-door cultivation. Zhao Liangyu used his identity as the eldest senior brother to bring Wendonglai out, so it wasn't considered difficult. After sending Wendonglai out, Zhao Liangyu went straight to his master's room, and prepared to complain. When Lin Yazi saw Zhao Liangyu, he said with a warm smile, "Oh Liangyu, what's the matter?" Lin Yazi actually thought very highly of Zhao Liangyu. After all, he was a disciple that he had taught for more than a decade, and Zhao Liangyu had always been obedient and sensible. Later on, he even treated Zhao Liangyu as his son-in-law. Zhao Liangyu said with a solemn expression, "Master, Chu Xiu is trying to destroy the foundation of our Nine Phoenix Sword sect." Lin Yazi frowned and said, "Liangyu, don't speak nonsense. Brother Chu is a foreign elder of my Nine Phoenix Sword sect now, and everything he did was for the sake of helping my Nine Phoenix Sword sect. It would be bad if others found out that you're slandering him in secret." Zhao Liangyu said hatefully, "Master, do you know what Chu Xiu has done? He actually captured the Wind Smell Pavilion's Wendonglai and threatened him to hand over all the information, records, books, and other things in the Wind Smell Pavilion. Those are the Wind Smell Pavilion's lifeline. He acted so tyrannically and without any scruples. In the end, all this hatred will fall on our Nine Phoenix Sword sect. Master, if you were in the Wind Smell Pavilion and were threatened like this, would you fight them to the death? Fortunately, I discovered it in time and let Wendonglai go. Otherwise, this matter would have blown up and even reached the prefectural governor. That would have been terrible." Lin Yazi suddenly smacked his head. He had been a little carried away recently, and had forgotten that the prefectural governor was still around. Although the prefectural governor didn't care much about Fonglin Prefecture's affairs and wouldn't investigate if the people didn't raise a complaint, they wouldn't be able to do anything if the other party was forced into a corner and offered all the benefits to the prefectural governor to make peace. Although Chu Xiu was Guzun's successor, the prefectural governor was backed by a top-notch sect that had existed for 10,000 years, the Imperial Sky Pavilion. At that moment, a cold voice was heard. "You let that brat go." Zhao Liangyu turned around and saw that Chu Xiu was already standing at the door. Chu Xiu had come to find Lin Yazi to ask about the prefectural governor. He hadn't expected to hear Zhao Liangyu mention that he had let Wendonglai go as soon as he arrived. He had great use for the Wind Smell Pavilion's items. The clue about Ning Xuanji that Lin Fengwu had found was written by the Pugilistic World's media. Although the Wind Smell Pavilion didn't say that they were the Pugilistic World's media, the things they did were almost the same as the Pugilistic World's media. In the hands of the Wind Smell Pavilion, it was very likely that they had clues about De Guiwa. However, Zhao Liangyu had secretly let Wendonglai go, and had even come to Lin Yazi's place to act first and report later. This had really crossed Chu Xiu's bottom line. Previously, Zhao Liangyu had bared his fangs and brandished his claws in front of Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu hadn't cared. Back then, Chu Xiu had told Lin Fengwu that a giant dragon wouldn't care about the threat of a monkey baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. He wasn't interested in the monkey's territory either. Although he wasn't very broad-minded, he wasn't that petty. However, the premise was that this monkey didn't cause trouble for him. Otherwise, he wouldn't care and would trample this troublesome monkey to death. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.